Good evening, San Diego. I'm Chief Meteorologist Carlene Chavis, and I hope you enjoyed your wet and soggy day and were safe out there. This is your CBS 8 Plus weather update. Well, we had some slick roads. It was nice to hear the rain at my home, but then having to be out there on the roadway was definitely a little treacherous, and hopefully you got to your destination safe. But those slick roads are still there, and we still have some more wet weather in the forecast. It's just not going to be as intense as it was earlier today. So still a chance for more isolated rain, ponding on the roads, starting to recede a little bit more with the water, but you still have those slick roads out there, so please be careful. Cool temperatures will also be around as our forecast goes below seasonal. We hit that today. We're holding on to it tomorrow, even though we're going to be drying out. It's just going to take a little bit more with that air mass to modify and get a little bit warmer as we go into our forecast. For today, we also had some really strong winds that picked up, and that prompted a wind advisory west of the mountains. That was at 9 a.m., went all the way until about 3 p.m. We had gusts that were felt across the entire county. Cuyamaca Peak was at 50 miles per hour with max wind gusts for today. Also 41 miles per hour for downtown at the airport. You had 30s for Borrego Springs as well as for Oceanside right there along the coastline. So the entire county was dealing with those stronger winds, but those winds have calmed down since. We had a more active radar earlier today. There's that line right ahead of a cold front that pushed through. Now we had this area of low pressure that's been tapping into a weakening atmospheric river, and so that's why we had that surge of moisture more on the moderate to heavy side earlier today. And for the rest of tonight, we could see an isolated shower or two, starting to see activity moving in towards downtown. Still watching this cluster right here, making its way closer towards North County coastline. If it continues to hold on, also looking at another chance for some shower activity for the county. So it's going to be pretty spotty to isolated as we go from tonight all the way through early tomorrow morning. So the area of low pressure is exiting, bringing some much needed snow across the Sierra. That's definitely going to help with our snowpack, and heavier rainfall that was across Northern California starting to lift a little bit more. This area of low pressure will continue to hang around for several hours, and then it will exit towards the east. As a result, we dry out by tomorrow, but as mentioned, still holding on to a chance for some spotty showers overnight. When we look at how we shaped up for today, keep this in mind and in perspective. A few hundredths of an inch is typically what we see on a daily basis around this time. This fell today, so definitely exceeding that across the board. The wettest spot for us was Palomar Mountain with more than an inch of rainfall. And speaking of the mountains across Southern California, you had San Bernardino County mountains that received close to 6 inches of rainfall over a 2-day period. A whole lot of rain was in the works with this area of low pressure making its way from the north towards the south right across our state. And so for the most part, the entire state saw some rain, and we're also talking about some beneficial rain as well. So helping as we go into the start of this new water year and the rainy season. Water year started all over again October 1st. And if you remember back, we had that massive deficit. You're talking anywhere between about 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. That's what we had to wrap up our last water year. Drought conditions are still out there, but it's also definitely nice to talk about rain in the forecast rather than strong Santa Ana winds, which we have a tendency to see around this time of the year. So this is going to dampen that vegetation if we do get those offshore winds picking up. We look at rainfall totals for today, close to about a ½ an inch for Carlsbad. The same for Vista as well as for Fallbrook. A little bit more than that for Valley Center. You also had some areas that saw a little less than others, and that's all because the moisture was moving from the northwest towards the southeast, dried out a little bit more as it did. Pine Valley, about 6/100 of an inch, also talking about that for Alpine, and more than 1/4 of an inch of rainfall for National City and for Chula Vista. So we could see some additional totals being increased as we go into the overnight hours, with the potential for seeing more spotty to isolated showers for tonight. But as mentioned, lighter than what we had earlier today. The heavier stuff is done. When we look at the next 7 days when it comes to our rain outlook, you notice that yesterday was around 75% for rain, so very high chance. It drops down drastically by tomorrow. Slight chance as that moisture does linger. It's going to be exiting towards the east. You'll see the moisture in the form of some clouds out there, but overall things are going to be drying out quite nicely as we go go all the way into the weekend. Your overnight lows widespread in those 50s. We've had 60s for the past couple of mornings. We're going to get away from that because we do have the cooler air mass that's over us now. You have the 30s and 40s across the mountains for overnight lows, 43 degrees for Ramona, 50s really taking over the county, 59 degrees for downtown, 55 degrees is overnight low for Borrego Springs. Then we get into tomorrow where we talk about daytime highs that are still below seasonal for this time of the year by 10 to 25 degrees. We are looking at widespread 60s for daytime highs. So really taking a hit with this cold low pressure system that is sweeping through. Low 70s for Escondido as well as for La Mesa and El Cajon. You have 60s in the forecast, upper 60s for Valley Center, as well as for Ramona. Looking at 69 degrees for Fallbrook by tomorrow, 68 degrees, that's going to be for downtown, and 77 degrees for Borrego Springs. Your surf forecast for tomorrow, 2 to 4 feet with sets up to 5 feet and a high risk of rip currents at our local beaches. I also want to remind you of this. I'm giving you your surf forecast, but at the same time, you are advised to not be in the water for the next 72 hours because of the increased bacteria that happens from the runoff. So please take that into consideration as we go through the next 3 days. You have a water temperature of 64 degrees, and you're also looking at that next high tide being early tomorrow morning, right before 7, and that's going to be at about roughly 4.6 feet. When we look at our sunrise for tomorrow, you're looking at 6:52 in the morning, so getting the day started with those widespread 50s that I showed you. For the next few days, next 7 days, you have the 60s for the coast that go back into the 70s by Thursday. You also have low 70s tomorrow for the inland valleys that turn into low 80s, warming up by about 10 degrees when comparing our daytime highs for Wednesday to Friday. For the inland valleys, you're back into those 80s on Friday. You take that all the way through the weekend. 70s are set to return by next week with yet another area of low pressure. Right now, it doesn't look to be really favorable for any wet weather, but that could change up in the forecast. If you remember last week, it was looking like we were going to hit the bulk of the moisture in the overnight hours as we went from about Tuesday into Wednesday. So things do change in that forecast. I always say it's such a cheesy pun, but it's a fluid situation. So for the next 7 days, we are looking at mostly dry conditions. You have 57 degrees for the mountains for tomorrow. You're back into the 70s by Friday. 70s for the desert by tomorrow for daytime highs. Back into the 80s. That's going to start on Thursday, and even low 90s by Sunday. So the heat not done with us just yet. I hope you have a great night. Stay safe out there, and I will see you back here tomorrow.